The Starforged Crown. Part 1, The Map of Shadows. In the heart of the sprawling city of Eldoria, beneath the shadow of the towering crystal spire, lived a young scholar named Kyle Dramer. Unlike the noble warriors who roamed the royal courts, or the sorcerers who wielded magic with effortless grace, Kyle was an academic, a seeker of forgotten truths. He spent his days poring over ancient tomes in the Grand Athenaeum, dreaming of uncovering lost relics of the past. But Kyle was not merely a bookish historian. He carried a secret ambition, a longing for adventure, for the kind of grand discoveries that shaped legends. He had always been fascinated by the myths of the Starforged Crown, an artifact said to grant its wearer dominion over the celestial forces. Though most dismissed it as a bedtime tale, Kyle believed otherwise. He had spent years piecing together obscure texts and hidden clues, and at last, he had found something, a lead that could change everything. One stormy evening, Kyle sat in the candlelit depths of the Athenaeum, translating a brittle manuscript when he noticed something peculiar. As his fingertips traced the faded ink, the page shimmered, and a ghostly map began to take shape. His pulse quickened. He recognized the symbols, ancient markings of the lost kingdom of Valtora, a realm swallowed by time and curse. Before he could examine it further, the doors of the Athenaeum burst open. A cloaked figure strode in, their heavy boots echoing through the chamber. Kyle's breath caught as he recognized the sigil on their gauntlet, the black falcon, the emblem of the Inquisitor's order. Kyle Dramer, the figure intoned, their voice cold as steel. By decree of the High Inquisitor, you are to relinquish the manuscript. Kyle's mind raced. The Inquisitors were ruthless, known for confiscating dangerous knowledge to keep it out of the wrong hands. But Kyle had come too far. The map was his only lead to the Starforged Crown, and he wasn't about to surrender it. Thinking fast, he snuffed out the candle, plunging the room into darkness. With a sharp movement, he grabbed the manuscript, shoving it into his satchel, and dashed for the nearest exit. The Inquisitor lunged, but Kyle was quicker, weaving through the labyrinthine halls of the Athenaeum. As he reached the hidden passage behind a towering bookshelf, he heard the Inquisitor snarl. "This is not over. A mysterious ally." Kyle fled into the winding streets of Eldoria, rain lashing against his face. He knew he needed to disappear, fast. Ducking into a side alley, he pressed his back against the stone wall, catching his breath. He had the map, but what now? He needed a way to decipher it, and someone to help him. As if fate had heard him, a voice spoke from the shadows. "You've made some dangerous enemies tonight, scholar." Kyle spun around, heart pounding. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman clad in a long coat embroidered with runes, a curved dagger at her hip. Her golden eyes gleamed like embers beneath the hood. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously. "Call me Sylvain," she said, a smirk playing on her lips. "You're not the only one hunting the Starforged Crown." Kyle tensed. "You know about it." Sylvain chuckled. "More than you do. And I know this, if the Inquisitors are after that map, you're in for a world of trouble." Kyle hesitated, but he had no choice. "Then help me," he said. "I need to find the crown before they do." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, scholar. Let's see if you have the spine for this." The first trial. With Sylvain as his unexpected guide, Kyle followed the map's markings deep into the catacombs beneath Eldoria. The tunnels were ancient, lined with forgotten runes that pulsed faintly as they passed. "Stay close," Sylvain murmured. There are worse things down here than getting lost. As they ventured deeper, the air grew heavy, and the walls trembled with an unseen force. Suddenly, the ground split open beneath them. Kai Ellen barely had time to react before he was falling, straight into darkness. He landed hard, gasping for breath. A deep growl echoed through the chamber. He turned, eyes widening. A colossal stone guardian loomed before him, its hollow eyes burning with eerie blue light. It was one of the lost sentinels of Valtora, protectors of the ancient kingdom. And it did not take kindly to intruders. The sentinel raised its massive fist, ready to strike. Kai Ellen's mind raced. He was no warrior. How could he possibly fight this thing? Then he saw it, inscriptions glowing along the walls, written in the same forgotten script as the map. An idea sparked. Sylvain. The runes, I think they are a command sequence. Sylvain, perched on a ledge above, hurled him a dagger. Then you'd better read fast, scholar. The sentinel roared, swinging its arm. Kai Ellen dove, barely avoiding the impact. His eyes scanned the runes, his voice shaking as he recited the ancient words. The ground trembled. The sentinel froze, then slowly bowed its head. The glow in its eyes dimmed. Kai Ellen let out a breath, stunned. Sylvain grinned. Not bad. Maybe you are cut out for this. But before Kai Ellen could celebrate, a new sound filled the chamber, the slow, deliberate clap of hands. They turned. A figure stepped into the dim light, clad in dark robes adorned with sigils of power. His sharp, angular features twisted into a smirk. Well done, he drawled. But I'm afraid the crown will not be yours to claim. Kai Ellen's blood ran cold. He knew that face. Lord Malaga, the High Inquisitor's enforcer. The hunt for the Starforged Crown had only just begun. End of Part 1. Part 2, The Descent into Shadows. The Inquisitor's Gambit. Kai Ellen's heart pounded as Lord Malaga stepped into the dim light of the catacombs, his shadow stretching long against the cold stone floor. The High Inquisitor's enforcer was a name whispered in fear throughout Eldoria. Few who encountered him lived to tell the tale. His reputation was built on ruthless efficiency, and now his piercing gaze was locked onto Kai Ellen. You've made a grievous mistake, Scholar Malaga said, his voice smooth but laced with threat. Knowledge like this does not belong to the unworthy. Hand over the map, and I may yet grant you mercy. Kai Ellen swallowed hard but did not move. Sylvain, standing at his side, tensed like a coiled viper. We need to run, she murmured. And go where? Kai Ellen whispered back. He's blocking the exit. Malaga extended his hand, and the air around him shimmered. Shadows coiled at his fingertips, twisting into long, inky tendrils that slithered across the ground. Last chance, Kai Ellen Dramer, he intoned. Surrender the map. Kai Ellen hesitated for only a second before he acted. With a flick of his wrist, he hurled a small powder-filled pouch at Malaga's feet. It exploded in a flash of blinding blue light, filling the chamber with thick, swirling smoke. Move! Sylvain shouted, grabbing Kai Ellen by the arm and dragging him toward a hidden passage on the far side of the chamber. They sprinted down the narrow corridor as Malaga's voice echoed behind them. You cannot run from the shadows. Then, the ground beneath them trembled. The trial of the Starforged. The corridor twisted downward into an ancient vault. The air grew heavy with old magic, the walls pulsing faintly with runic symbols as they approached a vast underground chamber. At the center of the chamber stood an altar of black obsidian, atop which lay a floating silver gauntlet etched with celestial symbols. The moment Kyle set foot inside, the gauntlet flared with blinding white light. "The gauntlet of Valtora," Sylvain murmured. "One of the relics of the Starforged Crown's guardians." Kyle stepped closer, drawn to the gauntlet as if by an unseen force. As soon as he reached out, the chamber came to life. Statues along the walls groaned as ancient stone warriors stepped from their pedestals, their hollow eyes glowing like embers. "Kyle," Sylvain started, but before she could finish, the first guardian lunged. Kyle ducked as the stone warrior's blade slashed through the air. He barely had time to react before another swung its hammer down. With no other option, he grabbed the gauntlet from the altar. The moment it touched his skin, power surged through him. The runes on the walls pulsed brighter, and instinctively, Kyle raised his hand. The warriors hesitated. Then, as if recognizing the gauntlet's power, they knelt. The air was thick with silence. "You're their chosen wielder," Sylvain breathed. "But that means..." Before she could finish, the entrance they had come through darkened as Malaga emerged from the shadows. He had recovered from the explosion, and he was no longer alone. Beside him stood two more figures, their faces concealed beneath silver masks. "Inquisitors." Clever, Malaga mused. "But I always find what I seek. And now, you've done my work for me." He gestured toward the kneeling warriors. "The gauntlet recognizes you. Which means you will lead me to the Starforged Crown." Kyle clenched his jaw. "You're wasting your time. I'd rather destroy the map than hand it over." Malaga chuckled darkly. "You mistake my meaning." With a snap of his fingers, the two masked inquisitors stepped forward, and from the darkness, they dragged a bound and gagged prisoner. Kyle's blood ran cold. It was Ilaris, his closest friend from the Athenaeum. A devil's bargain. Ilaris struggled, her violet eyes flashing with defiance despite the ropes binding her wrists. Malaga regarded Kyle with satisfaction, the shadows at his command writhing like serpents. "Your knowledge makes you valuable, but your will can be persuaded," Malaga said smoothly. "You will help me find the crown, or she dies." Kyle's fists tightened. The weight of the gauntlet on his arm seemed heavier than before. Sylvain shot him a look. "Don't do it." But what choice did he have? If he refused, Ilaris would die. And even if they fought their way out, Malaga would hunt them to the ends of the earth. Taking a slow breath, Kyle met Malaga's gaze. "Fine," he said. "I'll lead you to the Starforged Crown." A cruel smile spread across Malaga's lips. "Wise decision, scholar. Now, let us begin." Into the abyss. Bound by a temporary truce, the unlikely party set forth into the lower depths of the catacombs, where the map indicated the next clue awaited. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and the more the walls seemed to whisper. They came upon a vast underground lake, its waters pitch black. An ancient stone bridge stretched across it, crumbling in places. Sylvain was the first to speak. "This is no ordinary lake," she warned. "It's cursed. One wrong step and..." A sound rippled through the chamber. A growl, deep and guttural, echoed from the darkness beyond the bridge. Then, the water stirred. A massive, serpentine creature burst forth from the depths, its scales reflecting an eerie silver glow. Its eyes, slitted and burning, locked onto them. The Watcher of the Abyss had awakened. Malaga sneered. "Another trial. How tedious." He raised a hand, summoning tendrils of shadow to strike the beast. The creature roared and retaliated, sending a massive wave crashing onto the bridge. Kyle and the others barely managed to hold on. Kyle's mind raced. The runes. He focused on the inscriptions along the bridge's edge, the symbols familiar from the gauntlet's magic. He channeled the energy, his voice steady as he recited the incantation. The runes fled, and the lake's waters began to part. The beast let out a final, piercing screech before vanishing beneath the waves. The path was now clear. Kyle exhaled, trembling. He had never wielded such power before. Malaga, however, was watching him with newfound interest. "You truly are the key to this puzzle," he murmured. "Perhaps I have underestimated you." Kyle did not reply. He knew, now more than ever, that Malaga would never let him go. The Inquisitor would use him until the crown was found, and then Kyle had no doubt he would be eliminated. As they pressed forward, the final chamber loomed ahead. The secrets of the Starforged Crown were within reach. But Kyle knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. End of Part 2. Part 3, The Fate of Eldoria. The Last Trial. Kyle stepped into the final chamber, his heart pounding. The walls of the cavern shimmered with veins of starlit silver, ancient runes glowing faintly with untapped magic. At the center stood a massive pedestal of black obsidian, upon which rested the Starforged Crown, a relic of immense power, its surface adorned with constellations that seemed to move like living light. Beside him, Sylvain gripped her dagger tightly. Behind them, Malaga and his masked inquisitors advanced, their eyes gleaming with triumph. The High Inquisitor smiled, dark magic coiling around his fingers like vipers. "You have done well," Scholar Malaga said smoothly. "Now, take the crown and place it upon your head." Kyle hesitated. He had read enough of the old texts to know the dangers. The crown was not just a symbol, it was a conduit of celestial power. It would amplify the will of its wearer, but if that will was corrupt. He glanced at Sylvain. She gave a small shake of her head. They were running out of time. Malaga Kyle said carefully, "The texts warn that only one chosen by the crown may wield it without consequence." Malaga chuckled. "And you are chosen, are you not? That gauntlet of yours, Valtora's gauntlet, proves it. Do not feign hesitation now." His voice darkened. "Put it on." Kyle's mind raced. He could refuse, but Malaga had Ilaris, bound and at the mercy of his inquisitors. He could fight, but Malaga was prepared. The only option left was to outthink the Inquisitor. He took a slow step forward and reached for the crown. The betrayal of shadows. The moment Kyle's fingers brushed the crown, a pulse of ancient magic flooded the chamber. The ground trembled. The air thickened with raw power. And Malaga made his move. Shadows erupted from his hands, lashing toward Kyle. The tendrils of darkness coiled around his wrist, forcing him to release the crown. Kyle gasped, struggling against the magic, but it was too strong. Malaga smirked, stepping past him. "You served your purpose," he said coldly. "But I will not leave fate to chance." The Inquisitor lifted the crown and, with a triumphant smile, placed it upon his head. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, a scream tore from Malaga's throat. His body arched backward as arcs of celestial fire erupted from the crown, searing through his robes. The runes along the walls flared to life, their light intensifying until it was almost blinding. Kyle stumbled back, shielding his eyes. What's happening? The crown is rejecting him, Sylvain shouted over the roar of energy. His soul is unworthy. Malaga's form convulsed. The shadows he commanded writhed around him, fighting the purging light of the crown's magic. For the first time, the High Inquisitor's calm demeanor shattered. He reached up, clawing at the crown, but it would not come off. No. No. Malaga's voice became distorted, shifting into something less human. The darkness he wielded tried to consume the crown's power, but the relic fought back. Then came the final burst of energy. A column of pure starlight descended from above, striking Malaga with the fury of a celestial storm. The cavern shook as the Inquisitor was lifted off his feet, screaming in agony. His body withered, his form collapsing inward like a dying star. With one last, echoing shriek, Malaga was consumed, his shadow obliterated by the light. And then, silence. The crown tumbled from where he had stood, landing with a soft clang against the stone floor. The rise of the Starborn. Kyle stared at the fallen crown, his breath uneven. The greatest threat to Eldoria was gone. But the crown still remained, power untamed, waiting for a new bearer. Ilaris coughed, freed from her bindings as the Inquisitors, leaderless and broken, scattered into the darkness. Sylvain approached the crown cautiously. "It has to be you," she said softly. "The gauntlet chose you. You are the rightful heir to this power." Kyle hesitated. If he put it on, would he be consumed like Malaga? Or was he truly the one the crown had waited for? Slowly, he knelt and picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around the metal, warmth flooded through him, not the consuming fire that had destroyed Malaga, but something different. A power vast and endless, but willing. Kyle took a deep breath. And placed the crown upon his head. Light exploded from the chamber. The runes pulsed with new brilliance. He felt the presence of the ancient celestial guardians, their knowledge, their wisdom, their power. For the first time in his life, Kyle understood his purpose. When the light faded, he stood, not just as Kyle Dramer, scholar and seeker of truth, but as the Starborn King. The legacy of the crown. Eldoria would never be the same. The fall of Malaga sent ripples through the kingdom, and the Inquisition crumbled without his leadership. The Athenaeum declared Kyle as the rightful heir to the Starforged Crown, and the people rejoiced at the dawn of a new era. Ilaris and Sylvain stood by his side, as they always had. "Not bad for a scholar," Sylvain teased. Kyle smiled. He had set out seeking knowledge, and he had found something greater, destiny. As the new guardian of the Starforged Crown, he vowed to wield its power wisely. Not for conquest. Not for control. But for the light. And for the people. The end.